MMA for today. Is it? No. MMA today for tomorrow. Episode, whatever. We got Max, we got Tone, and we're waiting on the King. But where do you guys want to start today?
I think we got to start with the. I guess you can call it an upset, right? Nagano gassing out and getting basically not picked apart, but dismantled by Miocic, right?
What do you guys like? Do you think it's an upset? I don't really think it's an upset. I think it's just like that's one of the things that could have happened. It could have been that way, or it could have been Ngannou knocking out Stipe with one punch. You know what I mean?
At least at least by Vegas standards, as my boy Max knows, since he just got back from Vegas, I'm pretty sure there was an upset. I think Miocic ended at plus 140 or something. So a lot of people thought that the Ngannou was going to win this fight. People that I respect, people that are very knowledgeable on the sport, had Ngannou winning. I don't think Ngannou fought his best fight, honestly. He kind of he's usually more patient, more looking for counter strikes, and this one he seemed to kind of panic and start just throwing bombs, hoping to connect, which is never a good strategy when you're fighting somebody like Miocic. And Miocic, the reason that he's lasted so long at heavyweight, which it's only been 3 fights, but at heavyweight that's like an eternity, is because he does everything well. Like he doesn't really like stand out in an area. I guess his boxing is pretty damn good. It's not like JDS level good, but it's pretty damn good. But he has that one trait that you need at heavyweight to do this, and that's his brain. He's super smart. His fight IQ is through the fucking roof, and that's how he's been winning these fights. And he just had the perfect game plan for Ngannou, and then add to that Ngannou, either his coaches came up with a bad game plan, or he just refused to follow it. I'm not really sure which one happened, or the moment just got to him. I mean, you could pick or choose whichever of those three. I'm not sure how you guys saw it.
I think Tone said it perfectly. For Stipe Miocic, he's proven that he is the number one heavyweight on the planet. And by breaking that heavyweight title defense record, it just goes to show that not only is he proven that he can win and finish fights, but he can also fight a very smart game plan. And not a lot of folks give enough credit to Marcus Marinelli and Strong Style MMA in Cleveland. And even though it's a small Panther-type camp, they've done wonders with Stipe Miocic, and I know he is a little bit upset. And John, I think you might have a good take on this topic, that he didn't get a lot of credit going into this fight. He was the betting underdog, and he didn't think the UFC really was pushing him much in this fight, rather just pushing Ngannou and what the potential superstar he could be. And then by him winning, with relative ease, I think he's rightfully there to be upset.
Yeah, I agree. He should be upset, but then at the same time, I was talking to somebody about this earlier, about how they promoted this fight is mostly with Ngannou being this scary monster that's going to be in the desert, like letting sand run through his fingers, like some fucking cartoon shit, right? But to me, I didn't understand that retarded shit, like when they promote that fucking scene of, I don't know if it was like Countdown or whatever. But anyways, going back to the promotion of the fight, he's upset, and he's right to be upset. But at the same time, them promoting him, Ngannou, so much actually helps Stipe, because they made it look like his challenger was so big that nobody could beat him, and Stipe went in there and basically showed that mixed martial arts is mixed martial arts. You cannot just go in there with one tool and wreck shop and be the champion. And Stipe, credit to him, man, because I'm terrible at jumping on bandwagons, because I always jump on the wrong bandwagon every single time. And I jumped on the Ngannou bandwagon, and it didn't work out. And when I don't jump on the bandwagon, those fighters usually become, much better than I expect. So it was it was great, man. I always like Stipe, and is he the greatest? What do you think, Tone?
I don't. I mean, if you look at him on paper, I think you would have to say, he's broken the heavyweight record and all that. But he just doesn't have like those career-defining wins yet, I guess. Doesn't have like moments. And I mean, I feel like I'll get mocked for saying Fedor, was one of the best heavyweights. I don't know. For me, you just kind of have like a pool, of guys that are up there. As far as being the best. I don't think Cain Velasquez's story is over yet. Obviously he's won the title and lost it. But I think there's still some untold fights there. And I don't mean to completely crap on Ngannou, but like, to clear it up, I did put out a list of like hype, kind of UFC hyped fighters, and put them on there. But that was just kind of proving a point that maybe the UFC is not being. They could be smarter about the fighters that they're backing. You have Miocic, the current champion. Great story. Not to say Ngannou's story isn't great, but Miocic's story is amazing. Amazing. He's a family man on the side, still a fireman, still doing a real job. On top of being the baddest man on the planet, as Joe Rogan likes to say a million times. And so why don't you promote that story? Why don't you get that out there? Why don't you go out and measure his punching power at the UFC Performance Institute? That was kind of my point. I think people kind of took it the wrong way. But I think Ngannou has a long career ahead of him and plenty of potential left. He has untapped potential. He has not peaked in the slightest. So I'm excited to see him in the rest of his career.
Max?
Yeah, on paper, Stipe Miocic, I mean, he just broke the record for successful title defenses, but I agree with what Tone said. He doesn't seem to have those wins over big, high-profile opponents. At the time he's fighting some of these guys, I mean, you look at Junior Dos Santos, Andrei Arlovski, Fabricio Verdum being the exception. He is fighting them not at kind of their peaks. So it will be interesting to see how he goes and what the UFC matches him with moving forward. There's a lot of talk about a possible Cain Velasquez matchup, whether Verdum finally gets his rematch or not. But he should be a guy that's marketed. I mean, like Tone said, he's the fireman. He's a family man, very respected in the community, very talkative, very elaborate. That's a guy the UFC can really get behind and build and can, send out to do a lot of this philanthropy and charity work. And I would like to see his face on some more of the UFC brand and organization out there.
Before we move on to the co-main event of that show, I just wanted to talk about Ngannou, Cynthia Calvillo, is that her name, from Team Alpha Male, and Cody Garbrandt. All three fighters got their hype train derailed. All three fighters sponsored by Body Armor, owned by Kobe Bryant.
Oh my God.
I'm just saying. Conspiracy theories run amok. But
Kobe's hype train has never been derailed. Never. You can't put that on Kobe, man.
We put it on Kobe. Kobe did it, man.
You can't do it.
That whack ass Body Armor, which basically sounds like Under Armour but for a drink.
I've seen it in the store at very few stores. I don't think they sell it at a lot of places out here. And I've never tasted it. It probably tastes just like Powerade or something.
Yeah, it's pretty comparable. They have it all in the Midwest.
See, Max knows.
Yeah.
The Body Armor.
Max is drinking that stuff every day, huh? That's why he's so smart. And they have that alpha brain inside. We don't even know it yet.
They were like that, like the Red Bull girls will come out and, hand out samples. They've been doing that around, some big shopping centers and things like that.
Long as they're in latex, that's all that matters, right? But moving on with that. DC, man. I picked against DC because, like I said earlier, I hop on the wrong bandwagons. And, I picked DC to win, even though I should have not picked DC, but that was my, like, Korean hipster moment, the last podcast. So, but, it went the way that it should go. DC goes in there. I think he's one of the smartest fighters to ever fight in the octagon, right? IQ is crazy. Like it's at that level of like Dominic Cruz. You know what I mean? His IQ is crazy. And he just did what he needed to do. And he took the shots, and he even punched Vulcan a few times pretty hard in the face, which is very surprising that he was going to stand and trade with them for that, that little short brief period of time in those, in the first round.
He stood and traded with John Jones too. I feel like that's an underrated aspect of his game. A lot of people don't give him credit for it.
So, like, what do you guys think of, like, we saw the fight. A lot of people know that this was going to happen. What do you see happening moving forward with DC?
And there really only seems to be one matchup at light heavyweight right now, and that's just due to the lack of depth. And that's another matchup with Alexander Gustafsson. The first matchup being very close, went to a split decision. Both guys had their moments in that fight. And with Gustafsson coming off a big win over Glover Teixeira, where he looked arguably put it on one of the best performances of his career, I think that's the only fight you can make right now. There is some talk about Cormier possibly going up to heavyweight and fighting Stipe Miocic. I just don't see that happening at this stage in his career. He's the light heavyweight champion. I know he really wants to cement himself after that John Jones loss. And a fight with Gustafsson really seems to be the next plausible step in that division.
Yeah, I mean, it's either Gustafsson or Kane. The division is just so – I mean, saying it's shallow I think is being nice. It's shitty. Like, it's just bad. Like, they don't have – the fact that Ozdemir even got a title shot in the first place kind of just tells you where they were at. And the fact that it was between Ozdemir and Jimmy Manuwa, I mean, that's a little insane to me. And then as far as the light heavyweight super fight, that's one that I could actually kind of get behind, because you don't really have big contenders at either division right now. It's not like 145 or 155 where there's just like this line of guys out the door, that deserve a title shot. So, I mean, if you want to do it. I don't really – and then but the thing is, if either of those guys wins, I mean, where do you go from there? It just it creates a mess. I know DC would be fine with moving up to heavyweight. He's obviously fought there in the past with Strikeforce and whatnot, so it wouldn't be a big issue. But it would just kind of create a mess that's not really necessary yet until one of these guys runs out of contenders, which is probably in the next one or two fights. So maybe we'll revisit that then.
I see that in the next month or so, news is going to come out, and this is my prediction. John Jones is going to come back this year, and that he's going to fight DC. Immediate title shot, that's going to happen. I could see it. And whatever happens in that fight, DC is going to retire, and most likely DC is going to lose. Because I think that John Jones is the guy that can only beat him. And John Jones will move the, division on. And there's a lot of guys John Jones hasn't fought. So then now you got a breath of fresh air. Really not a breath of fresh air, but a breath of fresh air in the division.
Breath of stinky air. I mean, I don't.
Breath of cocaine air, or, marijuana smoke air, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean?
The logistics, I just don't think the logistics really work out for – I mean, even if they let John Jones off easy, he'd still be getting something like a 2-year suspension, retroactive to when was that?
July of 2017.
So we're looking at July of 2019, which I think would be the earliest. I think him coming back this year would need you would need a miracle basically, or
I
for the
disagree.
UFC to
There will
say
be a miracle.
USADA.
There will be a miracle. He'll be back in July of this year fighting.
That's a very
National
bold
Fight
take.
Week is going to happen. It's, you know, like the UFC is gonna twist some turns. They're gonna dot their I's. They're gonna cross their T's.
They already got Nowitzki out here pulling all kinds of strings. So
Exactly. He's, you know, he's becoming. It seems like he's gonna become a star. He's gonna become a star of 2018. Nowitzki. You're gonna see his. What? Hey, does he remind you of the NBA commissioner for some reason?
Adam Silver.
Yeah, they look like twins or some shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Like, where does Vulcan go? Where do you guys think Vulcan goes now? He has a lot of fights he could take.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some fun matchups for him. You know, I don't. I don't think he's gonna get another title shot. You know, he got it. He got his moment. You know, good for him. As far as like fun fights that I'd like to see, you know, he's beaten a lot of the up and comers already. Maybe you have him fight Vulcan. Has he fought Vulcan? What's that one guy?
Volkov?
Yeah, Volkov.
Isn't he heavyweight?
Volkov's a heavyweight.
I was thinking. Okay, that was my bad. I think he used to fight at light heavyweight. At light heavyweight, some guys he hasn't fought. Like you could give him a Glover Teixeira, who's kind of more of a gatekeeper at this point after that loss to Gustafsson. I think that'd be a really exciting fight. It would definitely be, you know, stand-up war. And there's
Shogun Hua, I think, would be a great matchup for Volkan.
Yeah. Shogun Hua, you got, you know, he could rematch OSP. He could fight Gustafsson, you know. But I think that they're not gonna give him like one of those guys though. I think they're gonna give him a fight that he would be the favorite, and then kind of, you know, build
like
off
a Gian Vellante.
Yeah, or the guy that wore the diaper.
Junior Albini, he's a heavyweight too.
Oh, is he heavyweight? Well, they should just let him take off the diaper and he'll be a light heavyweight.
Oh man.
Yeah, so like you guys are both saying, is the division is not too deep, and man, it sucks for DC if you're the champ because the division is not too deep. But at the same time, does it suck because the guys are not as good, so you could beat them and continue your legacy? What's more important? Max, what do you think?
Yeah, it's just hard to know where DC's head's at. I mean, especially with Cain Velasquez coming back, so then that kind of clouds the opportunity for him to go to heavyweight. For DC, I don't, you know, I'm just speculating here, but I could really see him wanting to win, you know, another 2 or 3 fights, and that way just get that John Jones loss completely behind him. And that way he can, you know, kind of be seen as the true champion without any cloud or asterisk near his name.
What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I know he said he's gonna stop fighting at 40. I mean, maybe that's smart. He didn't get into the fight game until he was like 32 or something like that. You know, he started really late. So if he's gonna start late and get out early, he might be one of the few guys that escapes a lot of the, you know, health issues that follows professional fighters. So good for him on that. And he obviously has, you know, a spot on the UFC commentary booth, you know. That's somewhere where he's really excelled, and he hasn't really created any rivalries like Cruz has done. So that's somewhere he could easily just jump right into once he does decide to retire. I mean, a fight with John Jones, like kind of just, you know, what I already said. I think that John Jones is a while away from coming back. So I think for him to get that fight back would be really hard. And I mean, who knows what's going to even happen? You know, even if they tried to book it and something happens to John Jones and thing just drags on and on, you know, who knows what happens?
For real, like it's just a shitty situation. But he's got so much shit going on. He could sit out for 6 months, and it wouldn't be such a big deal. I think for him, I think it's actually better for him to not fight as often because of his age. But it seems like the weight cuts are not going well for him in his last couple of fights. You know what I mean? And of course, his performance is good, but eventually that weight cut's gonna catch up to you. And he is almost 40 years old. So
Did he have a bad weight cut?
he always looks bad.
I didn't. I was in LA for Bellator, so I didn't get to see a lot of the buildup and whatnot. How did he look at weigh-ins?
He needed a towel, and he always needs a towel, which is not good, I think. And his face looks like somebody took a straw and just sucked out all the meat. Right? That's what it looked like. It just looked bad for him, and I think that's gonna eventually catch up to him. So I don't see many fights. He might just retire on top. Who knows what could happen? You know what I mean? He might think that there's no one else to fight. He's beaten everybody, and John Jones is too far away for him. For him to actually fight him, because the more time that passes, the older that he gets, and it's not helpful. But who knows? You know what I mean? Like, he's a smart dude, so when you're a smart dude, you usually make smart decisions. Look at GSP. All right, continuing our discussion of last weekend, Bellator 192 going down at the same time, just on the West Coast in California. That is the stomping grounds of Big Tone. He was there. He was in attendance. He had his eyes on that leg. Let's talk about that leg.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, Rory tried to walk out of the arena and just couldn't do it on that leg. He kind of collapsed in the trainer's arms, and they had to carry him out. Lima gave him a hell of a fight. I think Rory afterwards said that it was the toughest fight that he's had so far in his career, and I don't think he was lying. He looked pretty beat up. But yeah, it was a great event. I thought that was, the main event. He went into the Rampage Chael Sonnen fight, which was kind of a dud. But good way to kick off the tournament. I didn't think Rampage was going to be able to stop the takedown. I thought Rampage would be able to stop the takedowns, but he just couldn't. So that was surprising to me.
Yeah, the Rory McDonald Douglas Lima fight. It was a close fight. Rory McDonald did what he needed to do to win. But I believe that it was such a close fight. They should have a rematch, though. What do you think about that?
I don't think they'll do a rematch. No, I mean, I know they want Rory to go to Canada. That's something that Coker mentioned. So, am I getting all that echo? Is that just you?
I'm getting the echo too. Where's that echo coming from?
Someone's computer mic on too.
Is that what's going on?
King, is your mic on?
My mic's on.
Yeah. He's not echoing though.
Is that me?
I think that's you, Toad.
I can hear it a little bit.
How do I stop that? Oh my god.
This dude's trying to do the auto-tunes with us.
That's what it sounds like. Shit. What do I do? Tell me.
I don't know what you do. You select whatever mic you're using.
Fuck. Did that fix it?
No.
Actually,
Maybe it's me. Let me see.
Technical difficulties.
Let me get my other headphones, see if that makes it better.
Am I echoing?
Yeah. For sure.
I wonder what it is.
We were just fine, and then I don't know.
I think it's King. He's the one who hopped on.
It's got to be King.
Just come in from the top rope and destroy everyone's podcast.
Now it's not
All right.
echoing.
Okay, that was me then.
Yeah, it's not echoing.
Must have been me. I put headphones in.
All right. So going back to the Rory McDonald Douglas Lima fight, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't watch the whole fight. I just watched the highlights, and then I heard a lot of people talking about it, and actually talked to a lot of people, not a lot of people, but a few people that is close to Lima, and they were, very adamant about Lima just laying on his back the last round when he had Roy's leg looking like it was pregnant, right? And he didn't stand back up and just attack the leg, attack the wounded area to finish the fight. I thought he could have finished the fight by watching the highlights, you know what I mean? But he didn't do it. And he lost the belt. And Roy McDonald is the first UFC guy to go over to Bellator and get the strap, right? Am I correct?
Ryan Bader.
Okay, Ryan Bader. Sorry, Ryan Bader. So Roy's the second guy. Now, this division, it's a good division. Who does Rory fight next? Max, can you give us something?
Man, it's hard, especially with the way you have MMA math these days, because Paul Daly, he already lost to Rory. Lorenz Larkin's still looking for his first win, and he also had taken that loss to Douglas Lima. A lot of talk about Michael Venom Page and whether or not he might actually be the one to step up, but that to me seems like a little bit too much to throw him right into Roy McDonald. So personally, I think it's wide open. Perhaps Lorenz Larkin if he has an impressive win over Fernando Gonzalez, but certainly some room to find a contender.
What do you think, King?
As to who Rory should fight next?
Yeah,
I kind of like Koreshkov, to be honest. I think, in my opinion, I still pick him as being the best welterweight in Bellator. I'm very high on him. I think he's a guy that could be top 5 in the UFC. So I'd love to see that fight again. I think I don't think I'd do a Lima rematch yet. Give Douglas another fight, see where he's at. He's kind of, in my opinion, a little bit of a streaky fighter. He's kind of his own worst enemy. It really comes down to game planning with him and how his opponent game plans against him. So Koreshkov, I think, is the most well-rounded fighter. I think I would call him elite, and I think that him and McDonald would be awesome. I wouldn't like to necessarily see the super fight with Mousasi right away. I think that's something that they should, keep in their back pocket in case they need it. Middleweight's looking kind of, slow right now. It's pretty shallow. Mousasi fight Carvalho, and then, then we can talk about it. But they also have John Salter in the middleweight division. So I'd kind of keep things as is. I know Rory wants to fight with Mousasi, but I think Rory versus Andre Koreshkov would be a phenomenal fight.
And coming out of left field, Benson Henderson gets the next title shot. In his contract,
Probably.
he is due 3 title shots. This is his final one. He's going to take on Rory McDonald. Coming out of left field. That's all I got to say. Tone, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I just looked up the current Bellator roster, and as soon as I saw Koreshkov, Nolan said his name, and I think that's the right choice. He doesn't fight very frequently, I think, is the problem. So it's a matter of actually getting him to the fight. But yeah, I think that's the right choice. And I think it's funny that, we're all talking about Rory Lima, but it wasn't the main event. They had the Rampage Jackson Chael Sonnen fight as the main event. Obviously Chael Sonnen can talk a big game. He can sell himself and his opponent and pretty much anyone else he wants to. And he advances into the next round, facing the winner of Frank Mir and Fedor. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. I think a lot of people were disappointed by the announcement of the alternates for the Bellator heavyweight tournament. Javi Ayala, which was I thought would be one of them, and then King Mo, who apparently was
Congo.
just waiting.
King Congo?
Yeah, it's Congo. Chuck Congo, who was apparently waiting to see what would happen with Rampage, because obviously him and Rampage are great friends, training partners, and everything, and he was not gonna fight him. So once Rampage got eliminated, that just became, the way to go. But yeah, Jack Swagger was in the building. He got a pretty big pop. What else happened at
Did he get a
Bellator?
fight announcement, Tone? Did they? I know there was rumors saying that his first fight would be announced on that card.
I did not hear of any fight announcement for him. No.
TBD still. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's still. I mean, they obviously made a big show and everything, but I don't think they really give him an opponent. What else happened on the? I guess El Pico against one of the guys from down here in San Diego. Massive body shot that put him on the canvas. That was impressive. And Michael Chandler getting a hell of a fight from Yamauchi, I think is how you say his name. Is that right?
Yeah. Yamauchi.
Lot of weirds. I thought at first that the reason he wasn't rematching Primus was for the because for the championship clause or whatever, but that doesn't sound like it's the case. I think there was just some issues getting both of them, to line up on a date or whatever. I think Chandler just signed a long-term extension less than a year ago, and from how he was talking in the press conference, it didn't sound like he was planning on leaving or had any designs of leaving anytime soon. So I think that kind of put that to rest.
Chandler just beat the shit out of Yamauchi, though, right? Just like dominant.
Pretty much, yeah. There could have been a TKO at the end of one of the rounds, that's for sure. At the end of the fight, I mean.
He kind of did the same thing as Lima. He kind of got comfortable on his back, and Yamauchi is known to be able to submit guys real easily, but I think Chandler is at a different level to the point where it's like it's going to be very, very difficult to submit him, especially when he's pounding your face in with, hard shots, elbows, whatever, he's coming with you at. But, man, I don't know, like this card, like Rampage being on here, I thought Rampage should have done much better. You know what Chael's going to do? He's going to do the same shit that he does all the time. Rampage, I think he's done, man. Like, he might fight again, but this fight just proved that he's done, man. Like,
he's got like 3 minutes, and then he's like gassed.
Yeah, and it showed like all. Did you watch all the what is it? The countdown show that Bellator was doing with Rampage and Chael. Did you guys watch that? And
I didn't see it personally, but
yeah, it showed Rampage like working out and doing strength and conditioning and all this shit. It was like a huge fucking illusion. I think that they put out there that Rampage was doing all this shit because he was probably just sitting at home playing video games and eating a fucking chocolate chip cookie dough or some shit. I don't know. But
yeah, I feel like his last 3 or 4 fights has just been like a replay over and over again, and it's just, I don't know. It's not like he's getting beat up like really that badly, but he's losing every fight fairly decisively. I mean, Chael even in that first round kind of outstruck him a little bit. So yeah, maybe he's kind of lost his luster in terms of entertainment, at least with me. I'm a big Rampage fan, but it's just kind of tough to watch him go out there and not really get destroyed, but just not do anything and lose a decisive decision.
Chael had a good promo at the end, though. I ain't gonna lie. He did the 1-on-1, 2-on-1, 5-on-1. They all gonna need 9-1-1. Has someone said that before? Because I thought I heard that before somewhere.
I mean, probably the guy. I don't know, maybe, but I hadn't heard it from him before. And I'm not a huge fan of the pro wrestling stuff in MMA. I think I like a lot of fighters to actually show their true personalities, but he's like the one guy I give a pass. I mean, I try not to chuckle at that stuff, and it was pretty funny. So I'll give him a thumbs up on that one.
He's like the OG. He's the OG wrestling shtick. So
yeah, he did it before it was cool.
Yeah, you kind of just got to give him a pass, and like I think it's funny that even today, because like as soon as they announced that he won the decision, and he gets on the mic, the whole arena is booing him, and it's like it's 2018, and Chael Sonnen is still out here playing the heel to a T and getting people riled up, to like boo the shit out of him. Like that's pretty amazing.
Timeless.
Yeah, where do you guys see Aaron Pico going? Because Aaron Pico, he's looking impressive. 2 wins in a row, 2 knockouts. 2 different style knockouts. One is a body shot, another one an uppercut to the dome. Who do they give him? Someone big? Do they give him a Henry Corrales? Because Henry Corrales won, same division. Do you think that's a good idea, or do they just keep making him fight like middle tier guys?
I don't.
Not yet.
Yo, let Max go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, not yet. Shane Crutchton, definitely a more than game competitor. That's a guy who's fought in the World Series of Fighting before. Been around the scene, the California regional scene for a long time. Has a decent following. That's a big win for Aaron Pico. Definitely not, you don't throw him into the upper echelon of the division, a guy like Henry Corrales just yet. But certainly showing an evolving game, and his hands look sharp, especially in those last 2 fights. It's clear he's getting some good training. I know he's doing his training camps down at that kind of private team that TJ Dillashaw is putting together with Cub Swanson and Mark Munoz and Daryl Christian, the wrestling coach, used to be at Kings and Reign too. So we'll see. Aaron Pico, I'm sure they can find another kind of mid-tier opponent, someone that maybe had won on a preliminary card, or someone that might be local to wherever he is to fight next. But definitely improvement, and he's showing an evolving game.
Yeah, I think it's best for him to fight like if this makes sense, LFA level opponents. And just to point out, actually, Max, he's doing most of his work with Team Body Shop, which is
Antonio McKee.
Yeah, Antonio McKee. And they've kind of like that gym and that like fight team has kind of just like taken over Bellator right now, because you got Baby Slice, you have AJ McKee, you got Joey Davis, who got a spinning back kick KO on the prelims. It was like buried on the prelims, and a couple other guys I'm probably just not thinking of right now. But these are all guys that are in Bellator. Anthony Pretty Boy Taylor. So yeah, these are all guys. I think it's a good place for Pico. I think he should continue to go to other gyms though, and train, with other guys, because he obviously, he's very young, and there's a lot of hype around him. I think he's going to need, a big supporting cast to kind of keep him grounded throughout his career. And he's making more money than, a lot of even UFC fighters are. So that's something, else he has to keep in mind.
Personally, I'm so high on him now. I'm pretty sold in terms of his potential at this point. I mean, that first fight, everybody still talks about the Zach Freeman fight, unfortunately, despite these 2 awesome performances. But I think that fight, man, like that's the way that should have gone down. People don't realize how much experience is worth in this game. For you to come in your first fight ever and fight a guy that's got like 10 fights and who's the guy contended for an LFA belt. It wasn't like they threw him some slouch that was like 4-5 or something, like they did with Heather Hardy on that card, who also struggled. Experience is a big factor. And I think that for him to even come out after that and defeat, the 2 opponents that he has, neither one of those guys were particularly slouches either. Shane Crutchton, like Max said, WSOF guy. Both the guys had pretty solid records. I think one was like 7-3 and one was 11-3 or something, or 11-4. So in my opinion, he's done really well. If you look at the span of his career, he's impressed. And I think just putting it all together, putting all those skills that he had, the boxing, the wrestling all together, I think the sky's the limit for him. He's 21. He's younger than me. People say I'm young. I think that we're going to see big things out of Aaron Pico in 2018. Maybe a Zach Freeman rematch sometime this year. I wouldn't rule that out. I think that would be a fight Bellator could promote and put on.
What about Horace Gracie's son. How did he do? He lost a decision. You know, like there are a lot of people are talking about him.
I mean, I guess, you know, don't say anything if you're not gonna say. I don't know. I can't say anything nice about it. It just wasn't. It wasn't good. It was not good. I think they tried to save it. They tried to save it at the press conference. You know, that it was a good learning experience or whatever for him. But man, he just doesn't look like he, you know, gets it. I don't know.
What weight is he? Is he bantamweight?
He's
Or my
pretty
weight?
tiny. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he was.
welterweight.
That fight was at
is he?
welterweight.
Was it at welterweight?
Yeah.
He was I mean, I remember seeing him around with Hoist at the different events, and I thought he was like not that big of a dude. You know, I was kind of surprised that he was even a fighter. You know, it was going to be a fighter when I saw him get signed. But yeah, that's tough. Not everybody's going to work out to be Aaron Pico or, you know, one of these other stars at Bellator, or hopefully stars at Bellator is trying to promote.
He was just very hesitant. Like, he just did not want to engage, it seemed like, which isn't a good sign. I don't know. Maybe he'll completely prove me wrong, and if they give him another fight, you know, who knows?
Think about the pressure that your name carries. You know what I mean? Like they've been trying to find the next Gracie to come out in MMA, right? In jiu-jitsu, you know, there's a lot of Gracies out there that do well. But in MMA, they've been trying to find the next guy. And Horace Gracie's son might be just a guy that he just got, you know, caught up in the pressure and just did MMA because everybody thought that you should do it. Who knows what the situation is with him? Because we never even heard. Have you even heard that Horace Gracie even had a son that was training MMA? Nobody really
This
knew.
whole controversy.
Yeah, but then, you know, like if you look at the best MMA guy recently that is a Gracie was Kron Gracie. He's had the most success, right? But you haven't seen him fight in over a year.
Neiman Gracie's pretty good too.
Yeah, Neiman Gracie. I was gonna say.
But it seems like they're just trying to find the next Gracie that's gonna come out and rule the division or whatever. And to be honest with you, I don't think it's ever going to happen.
You saw Neiman. Well, I saw him in New York, but you saw him in Connecticut, right, Nolan?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen him. I've probably been at 4 of his fights at this point. Every time he's fought a Mohegan, I've been there. What's that?
He's like 8-0 now.
Yeah, he's pretty damn good, man. Like, I just wish they would, you know, he's like the Michael Venom Page status where they keep giving him the same level of guy over and over and over again, and he's just running through them. So it's kind of hard to tell where he's at. I think the guy, you know, Dave Marfone, who they gave him in New York, I think was probably his toughest test that they've given him. But other than that, he's really just been given the same level guy over and over. So hopefully they give him somebody at least of note in this next year, maybe like you said, with Pico, like an LFA main card, you know, co-main event level guy, because I think he's got some real potential. I just want to see him get tested.
All right, now, before we move on to UFC on Fox 27, before we start talking about that, I wanted to ask one last question to all of you guys, and we'll start with Max. Chael Sonnen, he's going to fight the winner of Frank Mir versus Fedor Emelianenko, whatever how you say it, right? Now, who do you choose in that fight? And after you choose that fighter, if he faces Sonnen, who wins that fight? So 2 predictions. Start with you, Max.
I'm going to go with Frank Mir in the Fedor fight. I think Emelianenko just might be a little too shot-porn at this stage of his career. One of the greatest, if not the greatest heavyweights of all time, not to take anything away from him. And Frank Mir looked absolutely massive at the weigh-in at the media day for the rest of the Grand Prix. Even though his inactivity in his age might play a factor too, I think he gets it done against Fedor. And that being said, I think he gets it done against Chael Sonnen too. I think he might just be a little too big at this stage for Chael Sonnen to handle, you know, a out-of-shape Rampage Jackson versus a true bona fide large heavyweight like a Frank Mir, or 2 separate guys, 2 different entities, if you will. And I like Mir to get it done there.
King?
Oh, I don't know. This is a tough one. I love heavyweight fights. I know sometimes they can be awful, but I'm just like, for some reason, I always get attached to them, and especially when there's a pick 'em like this one. I don't even know where to like start assessing this fight. I think honestly, I'm not a big intangible guy. I think you can't really buy into intangibles in most fights. But like Max said, the size thing stuck out to me. And when I don't really have anything else to base it off of, I think that that's something I have to go off of. And neither one of them obviously are where they even close to where they were when they peaked in their career. If somebody held a gun to my head and made me pick this fight, I'd probably also lean with Frank Mir. I just think, he was having some success in the UFC despite their heavyweight division being very old. But he's been out for a couple of years. So it's really hard to say, man. I'm going to lean with Mir just for the sake of picking somebody, but Fedor's still got some power. We saw him drop Matt Mitrione, and it only takes one. We know that. We know that from watching the sport.
Then what about Chael versus Mir?
Tone, who are you taking in the heavyweight fight? I didn't forget about you.
Yeah, no, like if you had asked me before I saw Frank Mir last on Saturday, I would have said Frank Mir, no doubt. I just think at this point in their careers, Frank Mir has a lot more left, and I think he poses some problems for Fedor as well, namely the jiu-jitsu on the ground. But man, I saw Frank Mir at LAX probably like a year ago, and he's put on like 50, 60 pounds since I last saw him. Like, the guy is ginormous. He's going to have to cut weight to make the heavyweight limit, I think. Like, I saw him and Roy Nelson stand next to each other, and I couldn't tell whose belly was bigger. Like, that there's some, yeah. That's gonna be a problem that he's gonna have to overcome in the tournament, or maybe not. Maybe he'll just fight at 285 and eat the penalty. It's Bellator, so crazy shit always happens. But I mean, right now, I'll go with Fedor for I guess you'd call it a comeback because he hasn't won a big fight in forever. So I'm gonna go with the legend. Fedor pulls off, I guess you'd call it an upset, and then Chael Sonnen wrestle fucks him for 3 rounds.
Yeah, I think I agree with Tone that Mir, he looked like motherfucking Santa Claus at that media day. And he made Fedor look small, which is very rare. I mean, Fedor's kind of big, right? He's especially now. And yeah, it just, I don't even, like you said, it's just like the weight issue. Is he going to be so fucking slow? Because Fedor does have fast hands for a heavyweight. And all he needs to do is put one of those fast hands in Mir's face. And Mir, it's not like he has the best chin going forward. So, yeah, I totally agree with you, Tone. I think Fedor is going to knock out. I'm adding the knockout, but I think he's going to knock out Mir, and he's going to get wrestle fucked by Chael. Exactly what you said, because I see Chael maybe facing like Bader at the end, and Bader's just going to beat him most likely, but who knows? Who knows what can happen, to be honest with you. UFC on Fox 27. Jacare versus Brunson, the rematch. Before we get into the main card, I wanted to talk about the prelims. I wanted to ask each one of you, like, which prelim do you look forward to most, and explain why you look forward to that prelim, because there's a few interesting matchups on yours. We'll start with Max. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah, so the prelim fight I'm looking forward to the most is a featherweight. It's Mirsad Bektic taking on Godofredo Pepe. Bektic is a guy that I believe has what it takes to be champion at featherweight. He was on an absolute tear through the first 11 fights of his career, was dominating Darren Elkins for, I believe, about 13 minutes of their fight last March until he got caught with that head kick that put him out. And a loss to Darren Elkins, it's looking more and more like that's not the worst thing for your career at all these days for how many wins he's been racking up. Godofredo Pepe is a guy that whenever he steps into the octagon, it's all action, whether it's do or die, whether he's throwing up a flying triangle and submitting Andre Fili in the first round, or if he's going for broke, standing on the feet going for war like he did against Shane Burgos. So I absolutely love that fight. Bektic is a huge favorite. I believe he's sitting at minus 500 right now, and that's probably right what you'd expect. But on paper, I think that fight's a little bit closer. And I expect a lot of action in that. I know Bektic relocated to TriStar for this training camp. And Pepe's a guy that, can surprise you. So definitely a lot of possibilities for fireworks and for high amplitude action in that one.
What about you, King?
I kind of like you guys know I'm a little bit about the prospects. I kind of like the first fight of the night, Austin Arnett versus Corey Sandhagen. I think this is going to be a really exciting fight, really, stand-up fight. Arnett's got a really good karate background. He's been training this martial arts his whole life. He had a phenomenal fight on Contender Series against UFC signee Brandon Davis, who fought last weekend at UFC 220. That was the fight of the season. So I expect to, if fans saw that fight and they liked what they saw, I expect that to be, more of that in Charlotte. Corey Sandhagen just fought last Friday for LFA. Guy's got some vicious body kicks. He actually choked out one of the Diaz brothers' training partners in like a minute, and he's a guy to watch. It'll be interesting to see him taking the second fight on 8 days, in 8 days. But I think this is going to be, like I said, just an all-out war, and I think it's going to surprise some people and get the night started off in a way that we would want it to.
Sandhagen's been a main training partner of TJ Dillashaw for the past 2 years or so. So he's definitely a guy to watch.
Yeah, that was my boy Jose Aguayo, and he it wasn't a submission. He landed he bounced his head off
right.
elbows. I didn't even know Jose was fighting on that card till after the fact. I would have been really excited for him, and then I would have been extremely disappointed. So maybe that's for the best. But yeah, I think. I don't know. I think he'll turn it around. He's still really young. My fight of the night, or my prelim fight of the card, would be Mara Romero Barella and you already knew Caitlin Chukagian. Yeah, I think flyweight being a new division. Barella, I think, opened some people's eyes in her debut because she was just kind of getting looked over, and she's just very strong. And even with Caitlin moving down from 135, I think Barella will have the strength advantage, and she has a judo base. If she can get inside and get to the clinch and take Caitlin down, I think she'll have the advantage on the mat, and maybe surprise some more people and keep rising in the flyweight rankings. But overall, I'm just really interested in the women's flyweight division. Everybody likes something new and shiny, and that's kind of, there's a lot of opportunities in that division right now. A lot of people see the champion as being weak, and there's just a lot of, you'll probably see a lot of fluctuation in the rankings, with it being so thin right now. So that's just what interests me on the prelims. But I like your guys' choices as well. Those were really good. Bektic and Austin Arnett getting his UFC debut.
What about you, John? What fight on the prelims are you looking forward to most?
I'm looking at Bobby Green versus Eric Koch. Is it Koch or Koch?
Koch,
right? Eric Koch, right? So now Eric Koch is very interesting because, he started off as a featherweight for the UFC, and he kind of tore through the competition at featherweight. Then he hit a speed bump, which was Ricardo Lamas, Dustin Poirier. Because of that, he moves up to lightweight because he has problems with the weight cut. And his lightweight career so far has been up and down. He's won one, he's lost one. His last fight, he lost a clear unanimous decision to Clay Guida. And he's in a weird position. It's like, where is he? Is he a gatekeeper? Is he up and comer? You can't really call him an up and comer because he's been in the UFC for a while. Then you got on the other side Bobby Green. Bobby Green was a guy, a lot of potential. tough guy, but he's lost his last 4 basically. And his last fight was a draw with Lando Veneta. But before that, he lost 3 in a row. And it's interesting to see where both these guys are mentally in their career, because if you look at Bobby Green's performances, it doesn't seem like that he doesn't really get angry, or he doesn't really show much emotion when he loses. And to me, that's not something that is good for a fighter. When you lose, it sucks to lose, man. You lost. It's like, but it seems like he's comfortable with that. And that worries me when he's going into a fight against Eric Koch, because Eric Koch, he's a guy that can mix it up. He's a guy that can go in there and wrestle if he needs to wrestle. He's a guy that can go in there and strike if he needs to strike. And I want to see where Bobby Green is mentally. Is he still there? Can he still be a top 10 guy, a top 15 guy? Or is Eric Koch going to go in there and fight the smart fight and take out Bobby Green and become a top 15 guy? That's the storyline that I'm looking at with Koch versus Green. And I like both of these guys, but one of them is going to get cut. It looks like it's going to happen soon. And this fight might determine that, in my opinion.
I'm surprised we got to this point. Those two have pulled out of more fights than most lightweights. So we still got some time. We still got a couple days. So I want to ruin anything, but miracles do happen in MMA.
Bobby Green has pulled out of fights with Abel Trujillo twice, Donald Cerrone, Jorge Masvidal twice, Al Iaquinta, and Josh Berkman. That's a long list of pullouts right there.
Yeah.
One guy.
Koch missed a fight with Jose Aldo 3 separate times.
No, I looked up Koch on Tapology just because I was interested, because I think he disappeared from the scene for a little bit due to a motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. He has been either removed, like canceled fights or rescheduled fights 12 times since he made his UFC debut.
That's wild.
It's got to be like a record or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Tony Martin, Drew Dober, Joe Proctor, Drew Dober, Ramsey Nijem, Ricardo Lamas, Jose Aldo, Dustin Poirier, Cub Swanson.
Talking about Drew Dober, first fight on the main card, Drew Dober at welterweight versus another guy that's supposed to be a lightweight, Frank Camacho. This is going to be – I think this is probably the best matchup on the card, to be honest with you. Like, even-wise, you know what I mean? Like, leveled off. Who are you taking here? Like, let's talk to King first. Who are you taking in this fight and why?
That's a tough one, man. But I do agree with you. I think this is the best, most evenly matched fight on the card, and I think it's probably going to be my pick for fight of the night here too. Camacho, 2 fights in the UFC, 2 fight of the nights. I don't remember when the last person to do that was, or if there's ever been a person to do that. But pretty phenomenal stuff from him thus far. Fighting at welterweight. These guys both, mind you, walk around probably around 170. So they're both around the same size guys. So I don't think, there's nobody that's having a crazy weight cut matched up against somebody that's having no weight cut. So I think the playing field's even there. We can kind of throw that out the window. This is a tough fight to call. I think Drew Dober has showed leaps, has improved leaps and bounds in his UFC career. He kind of went from being somebody that a lot of people thought was going to have, a 2-and-out or a 3-and-out career in the UFC to being a guy that now is, going to be favored against a lot of the guys in the mid-tier of the division. So it's a tough fight. I'm going to lean with Camacho. I just don't know if Drew Dober has the power to put Camacho out. The guy's got a chin for days. And I think Camacho's a little quicker, got some, better hand speed, can move in and out. So I'm going to go with Camacho, but Dober's tough, man, and he's getting better every fight, so he's kind of hard to call.
What do you think, Max?
Yeah, Drew Dober really seems to be coming into his own as a fighter. And he's won 3 of 4, had a real clear decision victory over Scott Holtzman. I believe that was in December of 2015. And then he had the knockout win over Jason Gonzalez. Did stumble against Olivier Aubin-Mercier, but answered back nicely. First-round knockout, Josh Berkman. I'm not sure where he's doing his camp now that Elevation Fight Team has disbanded. I don't
Long
know if he's
Island
still in
MMA,
the-
I think.
Oh, he is. Okay.
Yeah.
So there are some decent fighters out there that he'll certainly have some good training. Camacho, like Nolan said, tough as they come, can absolutely take a punch. Always brings the fight. But I like Dober here. I think he has more ways to win. I agree with Nolan. I don't think he's going to be able to put Camacho out with a punch, but as we saw in his fight against Scott Holtzman, and as we've seen in his UFC career thus far, he is pretty well rounded. Drew Dober does have that ability to get the fight to the ground, and so if he is, not quite doing as well on the feet, I expect him to mix it up and shoot for some takedowns too.
Tone?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for fighters, the style of fighter that Drew Dober is. The Muay Thai clinch game. He's kind of added the takedowns from the clinch. We saw, I think it was in his last fight or maybe the fight before that, where he got quite a few takedowns from the clinch, which is a whole nother wrinkle to his game. I think he's just a more technical striker, and I think he'll even the thing that I might see happening is Camacho out voluming him, and just he's always moving forward, he's always throwing, and judges tend to go with the guy pressing the action and throwing more strikes, even if he's getting countered quite a bit. But I would side with Drew Dober.
Yeah, I've watched Camacho come up over here in like Guam, fighting in PXC, those spots like that. And he's been locked out before and by smaller guys. So I think Camacho might get knocked out by Drew Dober. I think Drew Dober has, like you guys said earlier, he has a much more well-rounded game, skill set, and I think he puts it together better, and he's not going to get drawn into a brawl with Camacho. I think he's smarter than that. And because of that, I think Frank Camacho is going to tire himself out, moving forward, throwing and just missing. And then that's when Drew Dober might take over and knock him out or finish him. But who knows? Camacho has this weird ability to draw people into brawling him for some reason, which was not a style that he had when he was not in the UFC, which is crazy to me. It was shocking to me to see him with that fighting style when before the UFC, he didn't have that style. So we'll see how long he lasts. But, yeah, I think I'll take Dober on this one. Now let's move on to the next one. The next one is Gregor Gillespie versus Jordan Rinaldi. Now, Gregor Gillespie, he actually trains, I think, with Drew Dober at Long Island MMA. Also, another person that trains at Long Island MMA is Dennis Bermudez, who is the co-main event. So, I think all three of these guys train together, and they're all on the main card. They're going to be fighting back to back to back, which is actually – do you think that's an advantage or disadvantage?
I think, to be honest, I kind of looked up where Dober's at, and it looks like he's at Easton Training Center, which is, I think, back towards where he was training before. So maybe he's doing some work at Long Island I don't know about. But, I think that can be, in most terms, if a team's fighting back to back to back, I think it can be kind of more of an advantage. I think, some people think, oh, fighter X isn't getting as much of attention as fighter Y. But at the same time, I think to have your whole camp be with guys that are moving in the same direction as you, pushing you at the same time that they're wanting to be pushed. We saw that this past weekend in Boston. Kyle Bochniak, Rob Font, Calvin Cater all trained together, all main training partners of one another, and they all won. They all, in my opinion, they all put on the best performance they've had of their career. So I think it's a good thing overall. As for the fight, I think it's kind of a mismatch. I don't know why they're doing this to Rinaldi. It's at home. I think they'd want to give him like a softer ball, but it seems that they're going to give him a guy that, is creeping up to almost be a 6-1 favorite against him. Gillespie's very legit. I expect Rinaldi to hang in there. He's a tough guy, but I don't see this one going to the judge's decision. I think Gillespie will finish him inside the distance, probably by knockout, we'll say in round 2, late round 2.
What about you, Max?
Yeah, Rinaldi's a well-rounded guy. He doesn't do anything particularly flashy or anything he doesn't have any one skill that really shines. He's pretty well rounded. He did score that Von Flue choke last August against Alvaro Chango Herrera. But I agree with Nolan. Gregor Gillespie has been on an absolute tear. I mean, he's still undefeated, and he seems like a guy that UFC might be building a little bit. All-American wrestler from Edinburgh University, and he's been pretty much had the same blueprint every time out as far as his ability to get the fight to the mat. But what I like from Gillespie is he's really showing some evolved skills in his game. We saw the knockout of Andrew Holbrook. We saw the submission, the arm triangle choke of Jason Gonzalez. And Gillespie seems to just have more tools and seems to be a little bit hungrier when he's in there. But Rinaldi, don't take anything away. He is tough. I don't know if I can see Gregor Gillespie getting the finish here, but I'm going to lean toward Gillespie by a pretty dominant decision.
Big Tone?
Yeah, I think Gillespie's just gonna ragdoll and murk Rinaldi. I mean, I don't know. I think they're just like Max said. I think they're just building him at this point. I don't really see any other point to the fight besides getting him some exposure on a main card versus an opponent he should beat.
This is one of those like DraftKings fucking picks or something like that. Like everybody's gonna pick Gregor Gillespie, and then he's gonna go in there, and he probably might have some injury that no one knows about, and then Jordan Rinaldi wins and screws everybody off, right? But I don't. But that's just me thinking out loud. Anyways, let's move to the co-main event. Now in the co-main event, you got Andre Fili versus Dennis Bermudez. Both guys who've been around for a long time. Dennis Bermudez a little bit longer. They're kind of like in a crossroads, I guess, in their careers, especially Dennis Bermudez, because he's fought a lot of the top guys, and Andre Fili is still kind of, climbing up the ranks or whatever. But I think this is a terrible matchup for Andre Fili. I think Dennis Bermudez is the guy that could put his face in your chest and just keep you on the ground. And Bermudez needs a win, so he's going to play it smart. And I feel that he's just going to go and cruise to a unanimous decision with his wrestling because he is a phenomenal wrestler. What do you think? Let's start with you, Tone.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bermudez is definitely, I wouldn't say 145 has a lot of good wrestlers, so I wouldn't say like the best or the best of the best, but he's definitely up there. His wrestling is very, very good. And I know Fili is good at getting up off of the ground once he does get taken down, but I see Bermudez being able to, take care of him, grappling wise, and on the feet they're a little more even. They're kind of similar. They're both they got a little bit of a brawler in them. We saw that with Bermudez in his last fight. Just decided to throw. Well, wait, that was, I guess, the fight with the Korean Zombie, when he just decided to brawl and got knocked out by that kind of weird punch. So that could definitely happen. Fili, has an arsenal. He has a head kick that he could land and some other weapons. So it's not, I wouldn't put it past him to land something on a fight changing kind of strike on Bermudez, especially with Bermudez's shaky at best chin. But I think in the end it's Bermudez grinding out a decision or getting a TKO or submission on the ground.
What about you, Max?
Yeah, I really thought Andre Fili was turning a corner when he dominated Hakron Diaz at the end of 2016, I believe. And then since then, he really has not been the same. We saw him get picked apart by Calvin Kattar, just a dominant decision for Kattar. And we've seen how good Kattar is, especially with his performance last weekend. And then he had that fight against Artem Lobov, I believe that was in Poland, and just didn't really show a ton of different skills. He just kept going back to the well with the takedown. It was working for him, but he really wasn't doing too much with it. Bermudez has trouble with the hitters of the division, as Tone mentioned, a little bit of a shaky chin, getting knocked out, many times as well as being dropped. But this, like you said, John, this is a good matchup for him. He really has the skills on the feet, and I think he'll definitely win the battles in the scrambles and in the grappling as a whole, and shouldn't have too much of a trouble, getting Fili down and keeping him down. Fili does have a myriad of wrestlers at Team Alpha Male to work with, but Bermudez is a tough guy, and he is pretty gritty in there, and he does have he's very well conditioned every time out. So I do expect him to grind out a decision win.
King?
I'm going with Bermudez. I think Max kind of touched on what I was going to say with, Fili. Honestly, I kind of think they both did. I think they both kind of plateaued a little bit in their careers. I think Fili, like Max said after the Hakron Diaz fight, just kind of never necessarily got any better. And then people figured out the puzzle. And then, he may have even regressed a little bit. I think he made that last fight against Lobov a little harder than it needed to be. It was decisive, but maybe not as dominant as I would have thought. And then Bermudez, on the other hand, he was kind of climbing. He was on that big win streak. And now that he's been getting some top contenders, and he's been losing. The last fight against Darren Elkins was close. Then he got murdered by Korean Zombie, like Tone and Max said. But I don't think he's regressed necessarily. I think he's just kind of flatlined. So I'm going to go with Bermudez. I think it'll be a decision probably. It could be a fun fight. And it also could be, kind of a wrestling match. So I'm going to go with Bermudez by unanimous decision.
Yeah, Bermudez, even if he doesn't become a champion, he's in the Guinness World's a great record. So it's all good for him, I guess. It's all good in the hood, right? Now let's move on to the main event, right? This fight is a fight that very interesting to me. And the reason why is because they did fight before. And if you know anything about Derek Brunson, when he was fighting in Strikeforce, he wasn't really like a full-on fighter. He was just out there just fighting, like really not, fully committed to the sport, but still fighting for Strikeforce. And that's when he faced Jacare. But now he's fully committed. And you see that we talked about him before on here. He's that controlled chaos. He's like that awkward striking that you can't figure out, right? And he also has the power to knock you out, which to me is going to be the X factor against Jacare. I think Jacare is not – I think he's deteriorated. I think that he's old now. He's had too many surgeries. And his last couple fights, he's shown that he doesn't really have that finishing prowess against the top 10 guys. He doesn't have it, to be honest with you. He could do it to the top 50, 11 through 20 or whatever, but I think when you get to that level, Brunson's on the rise, Jacare's on the decline. They're meeting at the perfect time for Brunson, and I think Brunson knocks out Jacare in this main event. What do you think, King?
John, you're a smart man, but I completely disagree with you. I'm going with Jacare. I think that he's going to get it done. I think Brunson, the type of game plan and style that he brings to the cage kind of fits right into what Jacare probably wants, which is this fight to hit the ground. I think if Brunson comes in wild, striker, Derek Brunson sticking his chin out, I still think Jacare's striking is good enough to at least weather the storm. And then, Jacare's got some power of his own. But I think he's going to look to get this to the ground. I think either way, this fight, theoretically will hit the ground. And I think Jacare's ground skills are just terrifying. He's the Damian Maia of the middleweight division. And some people would say he's even better. His ability to finish is very phenomenal when it hits the ground. I know his level of opponent hasn't been necessarily what Maia fights at 170. But that being said, one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners, hands down, in the UFC. And I'm going to pick him. I'm going to say he gets it done by submission inside the distance, round 3.
What about you, Max?
I have not had the ability to get a good read on this fight. Some days I'm leaning more toward what Nolan is saying with Jacare having the grappling edge. But I think right now I'm actually going to lean toward Brunson. Not because of the chaoticness, but I think his power is underrated. I mean, we've seen all the first round knockouts, and then if you look at his last 2 fights, just absolutely flatlining Dan Kelly, and then putting Lyoto Machida out this past October. Those two knockouts, in my opinion, showed a little bit more growth in his overall striking, especially learning from that Robert Whittaker loss in November of 2016. And Jacare Souza is still one of the best in the world, but at some point he's going to deteriorate. He's been around the game for quite a long time, and then he's coming off a real tough loss and I believe another surgery after that loss. So I'm going to take Brunson, knockout in the first round.
Good choice. Toad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can never go with the guys that have bad fight IQs. It's just a pet peeve of mine, I guess. And Brunson's got some of the worst fight IQ I've ever seen in the UFC. I'm not sure, like, if he, I don't know. I don't know if he just doesn't listen to his coaches or what. But yeah, I mean, not to put it past Brunson, because he could totally just knock out Jacare in the first round, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I don't think Jacare's done yet. I don't think one loss to the rightful champ of the middleweight division really sullies him at all. And I think if it does hit the ground, like Nolan said, Jacare is just a terror. I don't think the disparity on the feet is as large as some might make it either, especially if Brunson decides he's going to be, running in with his chin up in the air, like we've seen. That's actually how he got knocked out the first time. It was almost a carbon copy of when he fought Whittaker, when he was rushing in and he gets face planted by a counter strike coming in. And yeah, it's kind of been the story of Brunson's career, just ignoring, a game plan and looking for a knockout at all costs. And I think Jacare is smart enough to know that that's something he needs to look out for. And if he wants to approach it a different way, I think he can handle that as well. We saw the more technical side of Brunson versus Anderson Silva, in a fight that he probably did win. But I'm not sure if that wasn't more of him being maybe overly respectful or overly cautious of the kind of mythical Spider Silva. So we'll wait and see. I'll be pleasantly surprised if Brunson does get the win here, because we do need some young talent to rise up. And let's got to face it, Jacare is pretty damn old at this point, and we're just not sure if he has another title run in him. As much as I love him, he's just up there at this point.
Yeah, whoever wins this main event will most likely face the winner of Rockhold versus Romero. Don't you think? Doesn't that make sense for the division, since Robert Whittaker has his organs being eaten by staph infection, which, if that is true, that is fucking crazy, right? Who knows when he will be back? Like it'll take a while to return, right?
That seems like it would be something that would keep you sidelined for quite a bit, probably for his own health. I mean, what if he takes a body shot even after recovering from that?
Explodes his liver or some shit. That shit would be just...
That's just not. I've never heard of a staph in the stomach. I don't know if you guys have heard of anything gnarly like that, watching like TV shows about gruesome shit.
No.
No one should know about this. He's like a med student or something.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, but I'm assuming it's not pretty. All the things that come along with it.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree with you on that point, though. I don't know if the win here necessarily merits a shot at the winner of the upcoming interim title shot between Yoel Romero and Luke Rockhold, simply because there are two guys sitting unmatched right now in the division, one being Chris Weidman and one being Kelvin Gastelum. So where those two, I think based on the winner and the performance of the winner, then you kind of evaluate from there and see what matchup makes sense. But I don't know if I see the winner of this fight immediately fighting the winner of that interim title matchup.
Yeah, I don't think it's a given. I don't think it's a given at all. And I wouldn't say that they would be necessarily deserving. Jacare is only one lot. Only, his last fight was a loss. So, I mean, you kind of got to look at who is the winner. I think it's more likely if Brunson comes out the winner. He's riding how many wins at that point?
That'd be three.
So a 3-fight winning streak. I think you have a better case for Brunson if he does win. So we'll see how it plays out. But I totally agree with you, Max.
I think that Weidman has no chance of getting a title shot. The reasons why is because he's been finished by both Rockhold and Romero, and pretty decisively. So giving him a title shot with that history, and he hasn't really won that many fights. What is he on, like a 1-fight win streak or 2 fights or whatever? Or is one right against Gaston?
The Gaston fight.
Yeah. Yep. And so Weidman, I don't believe that unless he's got a big fucking shoehorn up his ass, he's not gonna get that fight. And like Tone said, I believe, if Brunson wins, he has the best argument to take on, take the next, to be the next title challenger. Jacare, he lost to Rockhold, right?
He hasn't fought Rockhold. He lost to Robert Whitaker, and then he had 2 wins prior to that, one over Tim Bosch, one over Vitor Belfort, but then before that lost that close decision to Yoel Romero. So, like, Jacare's only chance would be if Rockhold wins, because Jacare does have Jacare lost to Rockhold in Strikeforce. Strikeforce, yeah. Yeah, in Strikeforce. So basically, he's also fucked too if he wins, because he's lost to both the guys. But this has been so long ago, I think it's okay to run it back.
There's no way. There's no way. If Jacare wins this fight, he's not getting a title shot. It just wouldn't make sense. I mean, he just lost to Whitaker. He's already lost to Romero. It just does not. And Rockhold. It just doesn't make sense.
So it's only Brunson then.
It's only Brunson. It's one of those. Yeah, I had a good analogy for that, but I totally, like one where only one person has the
cards.
Yeah. It's late.
So the middleweight division, man, it sucks that Robert Whitaker, who is a great champion, GSP did the the bait and switch on everybody and took a rolled out to Canada. Who do you guys see, like, as a guy in the middleweight division that is going to come up this year? I'm not talking about like Brunson, or I'm not talking about, those types of guys. Before we end this podcast, can you give me one guy? We'll start with you, King.
I mean, I think the answer that a lot of people are going to go to for this one is probably Eric Anders. He's got a big fight against Machida coming next month. I think he's somebody they can promote for sure at this point. I'm assuming he's going to beat Machida. And I think that, that will propel him where he can now be put in bigger fights that they can really promote him, get his name out there, the Alabama star. That's just something that just can be thrown on any website, and it's probably going to get clicks and whatever. So he's kind of the one that's probably obvious. But the other guy I think is, maybe more far along than him, and somebody that could be with some improvement, be somebody we talk about is Paulo Costa Borrachina. I think he's a guy that has more upside than Anders at this point, but he also has more downside than Anders. I think we kind of saw that in his fight against Bamboche. There's still some things that he needs to work out, some kinks in the armor. So we'll see what those two are up to in 2018, but those are going to be my two picks. And the other one, don't sleep on Shoeface, Antonio Carlos Jr. I think he's a guy that people kind of wrote off pretty quickly, but his jiu-jitsu skills are scary, man. Like submitting Eric Spicely, who's a really high-level black belt in jiu-jitsu, like it was nothing. Definitely keep an eye on him too.
What you think, Max?
Well, Nolan just stole all three of my answers, first, second, and third. So I'm going to have to go deep into the trenches here. As far as like a guy that's already kind of in contention, I think Kelvin Gastelum is going to learn a lot from his loss to Chris Weidman and use that to turn him around. I mean, look at his performance since then. Absolutely stellar. If you look at guys toward the bottom, I've always been a big fan of Brad Tavares, and I think he's finally starting to put his skills all together. We've seen a couple good, impressive performances out of him, and I'm looking forward to seeing him run it back into the UFC. A young guy I would say to keep an eye on is the recently signed and set to debut Israel Adesanya. Is that how you say his name, Nolan?
Yep, I think you know.
Looking forward to his UFC debut. Undefeated guy, and just some of the most clean, flashy striking technique you've seen, and that's looking forward to see how he competes inside the UFC.
All right, man. We're running out of time. Tone, one name. Two names, Tone.
There's only two right answers, and you guys got them all wrong. It's Marvin Vittori and Alessio Di Chirico. Those are the only correct answers. You guys all failed the test.
Hey,
Next time.
I'm gonna leave you with two names. I agree with Nolan that Paulo Costa, he's the next guy. But I'm gonna leave you two words: Anderson Silva. Peace.
What?